Hello and welcome to the Perpetual Traffic podcast. And this is the show where we share cutting-edge strategies on acquiring leads and sales to acquire more customers for your business so you can achieve your vision. Hello and welcome to the Perpetual Traffic podcast. This is your host, Ralph Burns. I'm the founder and CEO of Tier 11 alongside my awesome co-host,
Lauren E. Petrullo, the founder of Mongoose Media.
So glad you joined us here today. We're in two different locations here today. I'm in Maine, the great state of Maine. You can sort of see the lake out there, but it's like foggy, you know? You can't really see it.
You're sort of seeing is like, what?
Trust me, there's like a lake out there because the sun is coming right in. But I'm dealing with, frozen pipes and broken gaskets in the dishwasher. So that's, it's just a day in the life of a CEO. But it's actually kind of nice to get away and kind of get up here for like a day or so, light the fire, do a little thinking. And today's episode is about a little bit of thinking. I actually, we've had some challenges in our family with some of the folks that are in my family, my mother specifically. And then also I've had to take time away from the job, and coming up here is always sort of, I don't know, it's therapeutic for me in a lot of ways. It makes me think about things that are not necessarily in the weeds, but things that are higher level and what we're trying to achieve in 2025, not only with the show, but also with the business, and also relay that on to our listeners here at Perpetual Traffic. And one of the things that we tend to do, you and I, is that we tend to go a lot into like tactics, strategies and tactics. And then when we bring on John Moran, he goes like tactics like to 10x, like into the weeds. Today is not a weeds episode. Today is an episode which we found out when we went back, and our awesome producer, Kevin and Hector, did this, found out like what was our most popular shows in 2024. It wasn't actually tactical episodes. It was the episode that we did on delegation. We'll leave links in the show notes if you haven't listened to that show. It just dropped last week. It was episode 591. Is delegation your kryptonite? Conquer the 4 levels and free up your time. That was like far and away our most popular post. So it seems like a lot of our listeners are having a challenge with delegating and doing all the stuff themselves, which is what we're going to talk about here today, and how to get out of that trap. Would you agree, disagree? Do you fall into that trap at times? Like, what's your sense?
Oh, to say you don't fall into that trap at times would be lying. There's no one here that is like, I'm the delegation king. No way. I think I have strength in delegation, but I also have moments where it's like, maybe my team would disagree in that capacity, but it is definitely something that I'm always and forever working on, and ways to optimize of how we delegate. Like we now do this like captain's log when we have bigger projects. But for sure, I think anyone who is breathing has room to grow with delegation. And I think what's really cool, at least what I've noticed in myself, is that the type of delegation that I provide as our team grows, as we have leadership positions, becomes a different type of delegation. And actually, I can show more of it later. There's a book that I just started, the Leadership in 1 Minute Manager, and they have this whole delegation cycle. Let me see if I can. I'll send it to here, but like development levels based off of, I have a blurry background, but based off of the competence of the individual and the intelligence of the task. So there's like different zones of it. Like if there's a commitment level from them, and then there is a competence level, you have to delegate differently. But anyways, long story short is I love delegating. I can always improve on delegating. And my team who's listening to this will be like, yeah, that's fair.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I think we all fall into that trap, whether you're, running a department, or if you're a director of marketing listening to this, you're an owner operator, you're even a media buyer or an agency owner, because I know those are like the different types of folks that listen to this show, especially those directors of marketing, like running your own department. Yeah. There's probably things in there that you're doing that you're not really that great at that you continue to do. And the idea behind today's show, and not necessarily delegation, but I think the delegation show is good. It talks about delegation, But today we're going to talk about like taking a step back from that a bit, or maybe not even a step back, but a higher level. Is
Mm-hmm.
that the book that I've just recently read? I read it twice. I mean, I'm constantly like either listening or reading to some kind of self-improvement book during the day when I have free time. And then at night, I don't listen to anything business related just to go to sleep.
Oh,
Like,
you're
so
listening to Zodiac Academy, Ralph?
Zodiac Academy, I am not. Anything that I
Oh,
watch or I look at,
funny
like,
one.
if I'm watching something, like I
Hmm.
watched some documentary on like the chicken industry last night before I went to bed. It put me right
Okay.
to sleep, literally dead asleep at 8:30 p.m. I woke up, I'm like, oh
You
my
clucked
God.
out.
I plucked out completely. So that's sort of how
Hmm.
my brain works. So, but during the day, I'm all about like, all right, any spare minute that I have, I want to sort of absorb books, learnings, listening to podcasts. I listen to our podcast sometimes just to make sure that, our guy Kevin and everyone, takes care of that. I also, pick up a few things from you. I don't learn anything from myself because I already say what I say. But the point is one of the books that I'm reading right now that I've reread, I've read, listened to, and I'm now rereading again is a book by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy, and actually by Benjamin Hardy, and then really with Dan Sullivan using his concepts. So I've always been a big Dan Sullivan fan for years and years, never belonged to Strategic Coach, but I've always loved his ideas because they're so simple in so many
Hmm.
different ways. And the name of the book is 10x is easier than 2x. So 10x is easier than 2x. The title right there, I think, is counterintuitive to a lot of folks. But if I'm correct, and if the number one show of 2024 is accurate in our mindset of our listeners, I think today's show is right up their alley, because chances are they're probably doing a lot of the things that are not leading them to a 10x improvement in themselves and or their business, and they're probably doing things 2x. And it's sort of a metaphor. It's not like you're 5 million in revenue and you want to get to 50 million in revenue. That would be 10x in revenue. It's 10x thinking. It's a leap forward in a new and different way, so that, and we've all done this as humans, believe it or not. And part of the book, and we'll leave links in the show notes, obviously, for these, is we've all done this plenty of times in our lives. Like we have, the first time we were able to read, if you go
Yeah.
back to like very, very early days, graduating from high school and going to college, for some of you who've gone to college, or graduating from high school and joining the workforce, or
Mm-hmm.
like making big leaps forward in your job. Like first job I ever became a manager, that was a 10x leap for me. I would never manage people before. All of a sudden here I am managing people. So it's like we've done it before. And the whole book is about the 2x trap, and how making bigger goals for your future end up making your present that much more enjoyable. And one of the things
Mm.
that Dan Sullivan actually says, and it's a great quote, is the only way to make your present better is to make your future bigger. And that is not to say that he also has another book that talks about this called The Gap and the Gain, which is you need to be happy and proud and thankful and show gratitude towards all the things that have brought you to where you're at right now. And when you look back on that, you suddenly you feel a sense of calm. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like how to really 10x your capabilities. And the idea behind this is that if you are thinking 2x, just like a 10% growth, like a lot of you probably are listening to this, you have businesses, you have marketing departments, so you're like, all right, we just need to increase by 10% or 20%. I'm talking
Or
about
you
like
need that one other client,
we
or
need one other client. I just need one more client. Well, think
yeah.
about how do you make a massive leap forward? And all of a sudden, when you make that massive leap, if it's a 10x, the 10x mindset is about abandoning the things that you're doing right now that got you just incremental growth, and thinking
Mm-hmm.
differently about how you can achieve a massive leap forward, whether that's a 10x increase. Like for us, our goal this year is a 50 million valuation by the end of this year. That is a massive growth. Your goal that you've stated, can I state your goal?
You didn't say Michael.
To
It
make
was
a million,
like,
is to make $1
yeah,
million this year. Like
yeah.
those are
I want a
big
million cash.
million cash. Like these are big goals. And the
Yeah.
point is that when he comes sort of down to it, and this is where the delegation part of last year's episode is so vital, is you as the leader, you as the one who's leading the department, leading the company, you're the sales manager leading your team. Whoever you are, it's all about you abandoning like what you've done in the past and thinking in a very, very different way. And when you do go 10x, you are no longer the person that you once were. And this is a completely different way of thinking. And people get caught in this sort of 2x thinking. It's
Mm.
linear thinking. It relies on linear thinking, like double your efforts to double your results, meaning I need to do it all. I'm the one who needs to do it all. I need to be the one that writes the ad copy or goes out and does the sales call. This 10x forces you to say, now I need a salesperson. Now I need a sales division. Now I need a software technology that's going to revolutionize the agency industry. It's like, these are the things. And then you go and find that person to get it done, as opposed to you being the one that does it. And that's how all great organizations work. I was in San Francisco 2 weeks ago, and we walked to the Salesforce Tower. And I'm flabbergasted by that tower. Like, I know Mark Benioff's story, who was the founder of Salesforce. That tower it's unbelievable. It's not only like a tower, it's like 4 towers, and then they built like a railway station around the tower. It's insane how much they did. But that came from one idea, and it was a 10x thought. It was CRM, customer relation management, needs to be on a server in your office with software, and then you need technicians, and you need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, in order to create this CRM technology. He said, no, I'm going to take that same technology and put it in the cloud and then pay for usage. That is a 10x idea. And he ended up revolutionizing that entire industry. Coming from Oracle, he was sort of an insider. It was interesting. But the point is that is a 10x thought. And if he thought 2x, like, how am I going to make CRM a little bit better? We would not have Salesforce. We would not have cloud computing. We would not have all these things. And we would not have this mausoleum towards his idea or to that great idea in the Salesforce Tower in the center of San Francisco. I'm going to pause there. And I'm going to pause there.
You're like, everyone that is listening, you have to understand, like, evaluate for yourself. Are you in the same position? Are you falling into that 2x trap where you're thinking, what more do you specifically need to do of what you already did? Are you in this like moment of grind? Do you think if you just grind a little bit harder, if you just get that extra client, will that make the difference for you? And you're rough is what you're saying is I invite you to abolish that mentality and think of all the ways in which you could 10x, live in a world. What if, how might we get to a point where it's not necessarily just 10x of revenue, it's 10x of output, 10x of impact, 10x of true growth. And I think, especially now at the beginning of 2025, everyone listening and us included are in a big planning space. And we're just past the point of people giving up on their New Year's resolutions. I mean, some will argue that was like at 12:05 a.m. on January 1st. But we're 2 weeks into the year. The gyms are getting a little bit less crowded. And to that
True.
effect, it's while you're planning, if you can imagine a space where you're suspending judgment or resource restriction, what does that look like? What could you do? And one reference, if anyone knows who Eckhart Tolle is, I follow his Instagram present moments. And like, you're in a place of stillness right now. You're doing the Bill Gates. I'm learning, I'm removing myself from chaotic situations, which allows you time to think and imagine, what does 10x look like? So that pause for anyone that's listening, it's okay if you're in that trap. If you're like, if I just work a little harder, if I grind a little more, if I sacrifice a little bit more sleep, if you're using that 4-letter word, just, you're just justifying incrementality versus envisioning atypical impact and stratospheric success.
So good. Yeah, it's so true. By the way, huge fan of Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah. Oh,
Read.
follow his Instagram ones. Like when you were saying today
I
you were
don't
at the
follow
cabin.
him on Instagram.
Oh my
That's a
gosh. No,
good
there's like
call.
65,000 of us in his present moments. And this today, he said, stillness is where creativity and solutions to problems are found.
It's so true. It's like, where do you get the best inspiration for all of the great ideas that you have in your business? It's not usually while you're working. It's usually while you're like, for me,
On
it's
the
like
toilet.
on the toilet, in the gym, taking a walk, talking like just random stuff with my wife, walking
Mm.
on the beach, driving. And this is
I've got a
actually
really
one of the,
cool H2 project that I want to tell you about, Ralph, later, but I'm not ready yet. And I was taking a bath and my phone was taken from me. I was not allowed to have any technology. Like
it's
my
awesome.
stomach was hurting. I went to take a bath. Everything was removed. I was like, oh, I gotta read my book. And it was pulled away from me. And in that 45 minutes, probably like an hour and a half, in the pruning moments of me just becoming so wrinkly, I had you know exactly what I'm talking
Great
about when
ideas.
you've taken a
Yeah.
bath so long. But it came up with this big H2 project that I'm super excited about that
For
I'm
me,
not
it's
ready
not
to talk
baths.
about yet. But
It's driving. Literally,
mm,
I love driving. Like I have
okay.
I'm in Maine right now. I have to go. Like my mother, unfortunately, is in the hospital, so I've got like a 2.5 hour drive. I'm not
Okay.
necessarily looking forward to seeing her, in the ICU, which
She's
is
not listening to this. Don't listen
she's
to
not
this.
listening. She's gonna be fine, by the way. She's not dying. Anyway, but I'm looking forward to the 2.5 hour drive. I really look
Okay.
forward to it. And I mean,
Mm,
some people, like I know the founder of Spanx, Sarah Blakely, like as she was driving to work every day. I've read a bunch of stuff with her. I think she was actually on Masters of Scale podcast where she talked about this. She's like, where did you get the idea for all the things that you've done with Spanx? She's the first self-made, forget the Kardashians. She's the first self-made female billionaire. She's like amazing. I always tell my wife, it's like, if we ever go separate ways, I'm going to figure out a way to get to know Sarah Blakely. Anyway, she's just so cool. But what she does is on her way to work, she drives, but then takes a different route every time. So
mm,
what that does is it forces her, and she doesn't use Waze or anything like that. Maybe she does now, but it forces her mind to just start wandering. And that's where she
yes.
gets her best ideas. So one of the core concepts, a couple of things to takeaways, because we do takeaways here, is for 10x growth. Remember that phrase. This is one that really stuck with me. I now have this set as a reminder. It goes off at like every morning at 8 a.m., which is the only way to make your present better is to make your future bigger. I love that because it's
So good.
inspirational and it's just so good. So let me give you a couple of things here because I know today's episode is a bit short. One of the key strategies for 10x growth, I just wrote down some of these notes, is first off, identify what he refers to as your inner 20%. So everyone knows the 80-20 rule, Pareto principle,
Can you
constantly
just
like,
explain it for those that want to be reminded?
good recall there. So the 80-20 principle is basically 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. So figure out what your 20% is. What are the things that you are best in the world at, you individually, you do better than anyone else. And the other 80% is the stuff that you're probably still doing, especially if you're, if we know our perpetual traffic listener, you're probably having a challenge finding the who to delegate or just delegating it
Mm,
in general. The
yeah.
80% is where you're not working in your zone of genius or your unique ability, as Dan Sullivan says. And it's crazy that I've never been a part of Strategic Coach ever because I've read like every one of his books. Anyway, this is the one that I hadn't read because it was with Benjamin Hardy. So figure out what that 20% of activities that drive the most significant impact for your life or your business is, and then focus on those high leverage activities and eliminate or delegate, find a who for the 80%. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, I can't afford that who right now because it's going to narrow my profit margin and all this. I get it. I understand
Fair.
it. Fair enough. But look at it as an investment. Don't
Can
look
your
at it as a
future
cost.
self,
And your
like
future
that's
self.
a lot of people do like back letters. So Chris Mercer, who we know and love. And if you
Love
don't
them.
know and love him, what are you doing?
I
Find
know.
him immediately. Some of the best
Best hair, second only to
episodes.
you in digital marketing. I mean, really, right up there.
There we go. I accept that tremendous compliment. So he writes a letter to himself every 6 months, and he
Awesome.
writes it as a letter from his future self. So in 6 months from now. So he's like, Chris, you did great. You kicked off 2025 with tremendous success. And he does that to make sure that he's making decisions that the 6 month version of him now that's writing that letter to him would be proud of. So if you're in a place where it's like, I know my margins are tight, I don't have that investment kind of stuff, I just invite you to like Mercer yourself with
Mercy
the version
yourself.
of you in 6 months from now, that potential
Love it.
version of you. Think that you being tight or frugal or identifying investments as expenses with that person 6 months from now, wish you had done it sooner, wish you had done it bigger, like what would they look at? There's going to be times where like you literally can't. You have to pull up your bootstraps. That's fine. But I bet there's a lot more times where you are thinking you can't, but you're like, okay, maybe you, instead of investing in X, Y, and Z, you could cancel Netflix. You could cancel home fresh delivery. Like there's some privileges that could probably free up $1,000 to $3,000 a month, where you
100%.
suck up a different lifestyle so that you'll do today what most won't, so that tomorrow you can do what most can't.
Ooh, that's good. That's a quotable quote right there.
It's a quotable quote for sure, because I didn't come up with it. And I'm sure the person who told me didn't come up with it either. But yeah, it's you
Okay.
don't lie to yourself. Like for sure, there's going to be times where you can't, and you feel like I can't hire that salesperson. I get it. A salesperson based in the US can be a huge investment, but there's creative financing, there's creative solutions, and there's definitely lifestyle preferences that for the most of us, we think as basic levels, but there might be a chance for you to do it. And Jim Carrey had said in a quote that I saw, and I hope it was him, and I just didn't get like fake news, but he's like, if you're unwilling to give up a year of your life and your current lifestyle choices, you should have no business in expecting an infinite possibility after a year.
It's so true. They actually use Jim Carrey as an example in the book, as he
Oh,
wrote. He wrote the check. I think it's
oh
a five
yeah.
million dollar check to his future self. And in the notes, I forget it. I'm going to screw up the story here, but it was in the book, and it's like, thank you for your first major motion picture, Jim. And he wrote a check to himself, and then lo and behold, I forget what the time frame was. It was 3 or 5 years, and it came true. He did, I believe it was The Mask. If I'm not mistaken, we'll have to look that one up
That's
for you.
what I was like, I think it would be that,
I think it
but
was The Mask. Yeah. So
okay.
anyway, so that's a
Kaufman did the same thing.
yeah. Oh, when he sold Solutions 8.
Yeah, he had written a check to himself and he
Yeah.
kept that check on his desk, and now he's written a bigger check.
Yeah. It's so cool. So, but anyway, so that's part of this whole mindset here. So identify that inner 20. And then I look back on our last 2024. So 2024 for us I would say it was a rebuilding year. One of the biggest expenses that I think I had that I invested in was our COO, Ryan Hodges, who paid a ton of money for him. He came up with, as a SaaS guy, the Tier 11 data suite, which we're now selling like bananas. Secondly, restructure the whole company to set us up for amazing growth. And we broke even and even lost money on some months in 2024 because I invested so heavily into the who's,
Yeah.
changed a lot of who is in the organization. There was a big restructuring. Sort of we're
Yeah.
coming out of that right now, or poised for this big growth. So it's like, if you can do it, like make the investment, even if it hurts you. That's one of the things that I think a lot of business owners get stuck in. It's like, oh, I would love to be able to do it, but take the butt out of it, figure out where. And we're about to hire somebody who's a fractional CMO for us. And I was like, I told my CFO, I said, figure out a way to pay for it. I want it to be cost neutral. 2024 was a year where we were investing. Now we want it to be cost neutral. Figure out how to pay for it.
Cost neutral, that's such a good term. Like I like cost neutral, creative financing. I will say, like you said, I want to, but something I've grown up with, anything you say before the word but is irrelevant.
Right.
So
that's why Tony Robbins says put the word and for your butts.
Oh, okay.
That way you don't negate what
no,
you
I
just
was,
said.
I was like, okay, I don't, I was just like, oh my gosh, do I admit that I don't follow Tony Robbins and I really don't know his
That's
stuff?
okay.
I know who he is,
I don't think he really thought of it. I think he just took it from, like most self-help people, they just take stuff from other people, really.
Well,
I mean,
I told you Kevin Hart is the reason where I got that 10X, because I heard of the way that he does his planning. Every morning and every night he goes over his goals, and he says he goes over his like month goal, his year goal, his 5-year goals, his 10-year goals. And he does it every morning when he wakes up, every evening before he goes to sleep. And he had said, he's like, what I will accomplish in 5 years is so much bigger than what he thought was possible. And he always overshoots what he thinks he'll get done in a year. But if he didn't have those massive 5 years goals, he wouldn't be able to surpass it even further. So you had said, like, oh, that sounds like he probably read these books as well. But it doesn't matter where it originally comes from. The point of the matter is the idea and how you apply it to your business. And I think there's a lot of us, and we go through too. You invested heavily. Like, you did a lot in 2024, Ralph. And like, we all have these feast and famine cycles and stuff. It's just, if you really are in a famine stage, okay, we get it. Absolutely. Yeah. There's tons of creative ways. I would say if you're in the Telegram group, you go to perpetualtraffic.com/Telegram. There's a whole bunch of incredibly intelligent individuals that if you really are in a place where it's a famine, there's a lot of creative solutions and there's a lot of genuine desire to help each other, because all tides lift the ships. So that could be a really good solution. But if you're not actually in a famine and you're in a scarcity mindset, pretending it's in a famine, your 6-month Chris Mercer version of you is going to slap you on the wrist. And I would just evaluate that when you're thinking. That's just my only word of caution.
100%. So to go back to sort of the key strategies. So the first one is develop that inner 20%. Like figure out what your 20% is, and then figure out how to eliminate and or have someone else do the 80% so you can stay in that zone of genius. The second part of this is exactly what you're saying with Kevin Hart, with Mercer. Who knew that Mercer was an inspirational figure? But it doesn't surprise me, is to develop a 10X vision. So I have a reminder that goes off every morning at 8:05 a.m. of what my goals are for this coming year. And then I meditate on it for a little bit. And then I have a couple of other things that are on there. And then I actually do my meditation. And then that sort of, in that meditation is sort of like projecting out my future self, not to go too woo-woo here. I use the Mind Valley app for that. Anyway, however you do it, the point is like you have a 10X vision. And then you need to articulate that to your team. Like my team knows exactly where we want to go. 50 million valuation at the end of 2025. That is it. So surround yourself with talented people who share that vision. That's a key part to this. However, defining what the vision is, and it should be ambitious. It should stretch your limits. It should be slightly higher than you think you are capable of, if not very much higher. Like 10X for us, it's like, I'm not exactly sure how we're going to get there. That's okay. And one of the things I heard, I think it was Jack Canfield said this, I believe it was in The Secret. He's like, you can drive from LA to New York in the middle of the night and only see 200 feet ahead of you. Like, you don't need to know the entire distance. Yeah,
you could drive anywhere in Texas and see only 200 feet in front of you. Oh my gosh. It's like outside of the major cities, it's just dark.
Right. But the point is like between LA and New York, that's a really long distance. You don't have to know exactly what you do all along the way. The point is it's an analogy of you only see, Martin Luther King said, you don't need to climb the entire stair. All you need to see is the first step. Mm-hmm. So the first step is all you need to do right now, but it's not about the how here. It's about the who. Remember, you're not the how. You have to find the right who's in order to create that 10x future. So, which leads into that build the 10x team, surround yourself with those talented individuals, create a culture of high performance, innovation, continuous learning. There's a culture element to this, visionary stuff that has to go along with it for sure. And then last but not least, he says one of the big things is you have to embrace the fact that you are going to fail along the way and use something called intelligent failure. So understand that making the leap to 10x is inevitably going to be failures all along the way, but view those challenges as learning experiences. Yes, that's cliched, however, very true, and use them to refine your approach and improve the chances that you actually reach that success. The point is like you're thinking not 10% or 20%. And you love this. And I know we talked about this before. I think this is another analogy maybe we can hit on is Jimmy Donaldson, who you know as
Yeah, MrBeast.
MrBeast. He was in, they draw him out. I immediately thought of you because we talked about this before. He embodies 10X. Why is
Yeah.
he like the number one or number two YouTuber? Like now he has his own like TV show. It's like he's gone insanely big. He totally embodies this thinking. Like he explains that making YouTube videos that are just 10% better than everybody else may get you, I think the stat that he uses, maybe 4 times the number of views. In other words, an increase of quality produces some kind of exponential results. However, if he makes those videos 10x better than everybody else, then all of a sudden it exponentially increases. That could be 400 times the amount of views.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
let's talk about
not
what
about
Jimmy
just
does with it. It's not just the views. He's developing wealth. He's building businesses. He is not a creator anymore. He is a strategic business owner. He has employed hundreds of individuals. He is disrupting the creator economy. So his vision of 10x, again, isn't just on views, it's on growth and impact.
And if you've seen his, if you haven't seen his videos, you should see his videos. Like we're all in marketing here. It's a great example of a business mindset. Like he spends so much time on making one video so much better as opposed to just pushing out a ton of content and making it just a little bit better and okay. And that's like his mindset. That's the reason why he's so great at what he does. Yes, he spends a ton of money on his videos. Yes, all the money that he makes from YouTube, he pours it back into the business. But we should leave a link in the show notes of his story. Another great documentary that I watched this one before I went to bed one night, but I probably stayed up and actually watched it.
I was like, but did you fall asleep?
Yeah, I didn't fall asleep. And he talks about exactly that. It's like everything that he does, he literally lives in his studio. He doesn't live a luxurious lifestyle. He doesn't drive a Lamborghini. He doesn't do any of these sorts of things.
Engaged, so he has a social life.
Okay, so he does have a social life. That's good.
Yeah.
So
but
the point
he's dedicated
like
to his craft.
100%, and that he embodies this whole spirit. So I know we're at time here, but the point is like this is a good way. I was reminded of this by a friend of mine. Who's like, yeah, Fail Friday was last Friday. It's like everyone who sets their goals on the 1st of January, Fail Friday was last Friday. Like, look it up. Like everyone's now like, I don't really know. Like those goals are maybe a little bit too much stretch. I'm just going to go back and doing what I was doing before. Well, no. This show hopefully will inspire you to continue on those goals, set those goals maybe a little bit higher. As a great man,
a lot of bit higher.
A lot of bit higher is you need to set your goals higher than you think you're capable of setting them. Because think about it as an archer. The archer does not aim directly at the bullseye. He aims above the bullseye to account for gravity. So when you're setting your goals, whether they're 10x or 20x or 100x, set them so you're reaching high. Because
shoot
that's
for the moon,
where
you land in the stars.
Absolutely. Because even if we don't hit what we hit, like we know I'm going to hit it this year. It's like you're still going to, like, we are not going to be the same company. I'm not going to be the same human being a year from now. And that's exciting to me. Going back to Dan Sullivan's quote, and I'll say it once again, The only way to make your present better is to make your future bigger. Make your future bigger. Perpetual
So bigger
Traffic
is
listeners.
better is what
Bigger.
the conclusion of this episode is.
And that's not just making money. It's like, it could be making money, impact, all the other sorts of things that get you excited. So make sure wherever you listen to podcasts, leave a rating, leave a comment. It's now comments over on Spotify, which is very cool. Let us know what you think of today's episode. Yes, we are going high level. Think big. 10x is easier than 2x. And of course, watch us over on our YouTube channel over at perpetualtraffic.com/YouTube. All the resources we mentioned here are over at the show notes at perpetualtraffic.com. So on behalf of my amazing co-host and 10x co-host, Lauren Petrullo.
Ciao.
Till next show. See ya.